I know deep down that we're all going to be okay.
Yeah, I know I said disagree, but I would much rather be a paid intern than go back to grad school and work two jobs and try to finish all my readings.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hey guys, welcome to another video. Today I brought some special guests onto my channel so we can discuss internship and kind of compare and contrast our experiences through kind of like a game format. I hope you guys enjoy, and special thanks to my friends who joined me on this video. All right, let's get started.
Hi, I'm Madeline Rodriguez, and I'm an intern in Illinois. I go to Northern Illinois University, where I'm part of a special training grant for preventing and addressing bullying, which, by the way, NIU just got a new training grant for incoming specialist students for preventing and addressing bullying at all tiers. And so my professional interests are bullying prevention, as well as all things MTSS and PBIS.
Hi, my name is Karina. I'm from Southern California, and I'm currently an intern. I went to a program that was hybrid, so a lot of my assessment classes were on site, and then the rest of the program was done remotely. An area of interest for me that I am really driven by is working with the ELL population, and I love the crisis aspect of this job. That's where I really thrive. I love just getting in there and being a part of the team and collaborating.
Hey everyone, my name is Brad Davis. I'm from Pittsburgh originally, but I did my school psych program at Miami University. And I am interning now in a large district in Pittsburgh, and it's great to meet you guys.
Internship is exactly what I expected it to be. 1, 2, 3. That makes me feel better. I think especially with COVID, I did not expect to stay home and do most of my work virtually, so that's been huge. And I honestly, for me, I didn't get that much information about how internship was going to work, like the rotations and my placements, until I got there. So really didn't know what to expect before getting there.
Yeah, for me, the same thing. And, personally, when COVID started happening in March and April and May, I think I was thinking ahead, and I was like, August is so far from now, we're fine. Like, internship is going to be fine. It's not going to be interrupted. And I probably thought that until, I don't know, some part in the summer. And then I got realistic and I was like, okay, this is actually going to look pretty different.
I think something that's so challenging was being on practicum, I was able to collaborate with my mentors and sort of work together. And at first we didn't really know how many days I'd be there, how many days I'd be at home. And then I was kind of learning a lot at home. And trying to figure that piece out too, when I was really used to sitting next to someone and doing the report writing. I found myself having to kind of learn certain things on my own at first. So that was a bit challenging.
I probably would have put agree if it weren't for the pandemic, just because when I interviewed with the district I'm at, I was able to go in and visit the school and visit my supervisor before I accepted. So I kind of had a good idea of what I was getting into, but then right after that, the pandemic hit. So I put disagree because of that.
Grad school prepared me for internship. 1, 2, 3.
So disagree in the sense, I think with internship, there's so much multitasking. And I really feel like to be in this field, it really helps to come from a place where you've worked other jobs, so you know how to talk to people of different personalities. So I felt prepared in terms of the testing and the technical aspects and the theoretical parts of the job. But I felt like I really shined and stood out on interviews and in the job by just having job experience and just doing other opportunities outside of school. I feel like that helped me hit the ground running because I dealt with people that maybe I didn't necessarily get along with, and I knew how to manage priorities because I worked before. So I felt like that helped more in the sense of managing everything.
Yeah, I get that. I feel that I would feel more confident and have less imposter syndrome if, obviously, if COVID wasn't happening. I think that just being in school and everything occurring naturally would allow me to feel more comfortable in my role.
I agree with that as well. I think I felt generally prepared for internship from my experiences in grad school, keeping in mind that I had heard from a lot of other interns that it's a huge learning curve when you start internship, and you really learn the ins and outs of the job during internship. So I think I was as prepared as I could have been, given that there's a lot more learning to be done.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like I said agree, but with like a lot of caveats. I feel like I'm still learning so much on internship, and I feel like I learned how to give assessment in grad school, but I didn't really technically learn like all the eligibility, like terms and processing and all of that until like now, like putting everything into practice. And I feel like grad school doesn't really teach you like executive functioning or relationship building skills. So I like Karina, you said, I think some of those skills you kind of get from previous experiences, and some of them you're kind of learning along the way.
Yeah, I second all of those. I would definitely rephrase and say I felt as good as I could have been, because you guys all hit it on the nail on the head. It's like you learn so much every day. It's like, it's kind of insane.
School psychologists in my county do a lot of things other than assessment. 1, 2, 3.
So I'm the odd one out. So I'll just say, I'll speak for my district, just because, it probably differs from district to district more than county to county. But I would say for Pittsburgh Public, we're a large urban district with a high need population. So I would say 70% is being generous. And I would say that most of the time, 70% of the time, our psychs are doing evals or re-evals for special ed determination. And, sometimes there's some counseling or some intervention groups or, PBIS and MTSS meetings, stuff like that. But I would say it's predominantly testing typically. This year has been a little different since testing's kind of been in like limbo. So we've been able to do more things, which is good. I do think the district is moving towards a more like multifaceted role, which is great to see.
I'm at Oak Park Unified School District in Southern California, and I feel like my psych mentors are such superheroes. They do a lot of testing for sure, but they're also doing counseling and so much consultation. And they kind of have a hand at almost everything. Like if there's new programs, they are involved in that. They do 504 plans. They're sitting in on meetings. So you get to do a lot of different things just even in a week. So they're very much involved in every process.
So in Illinois, I would say especially, I would say that the school psych roles align pretty well with the NASP outline of the roles of a school psych, which I really like, because I've heard that in a lot of other places it can just be a primarily testing based role. But where I'm at and the other schools that I've had my practicum experiences at, I've had a lot of experiences with MTSS, and that process, I think, allows school psychs to spend more time doing other things that, might be just as important as testing.
My internship is 100% virtual. 1, 2, 3.
So odd one out again. I would say there's a caveat to mine. So we are virtual. We've been remote since August, with like an exception of like 1 week last week where the staff went in, and then by Friday we were back to virtual. So with that being said, we are still trying to get testing done in like a clinic format where we can still do it safely. And my district also handles like private school evaluations, which is nice because it's given me the opportunity to go out and do some kind of evaluation. But from August till now, we have been pretty much 100% virtual.
So in my district, we've been mostly virtual. However, certain students who receive special education services have been able to come in and get their services in person, as well as doing any kind of testing for special education. We've been able to do that in person as long as parents are are comfortable with that and they agree to bringing their child in.
That sounds pretty similar to my district. We're kind of phasing in like the level 1 and 2 ESL students and then some special ed students, and then testing if it's necessary. You know, if we can do it all online, then we do. But if we have to do like cognitive measures and do it in person, we do. So I think we were supposed to phase in more this week, but they halted it because of all the news that's been coming out, and just to be extra cautious, and especially with the holidays, I think they're trying to slow things down. But there's a lot of pushback from, you know, families and politics.
Yeah, so at my district, we started off a little bit slower, where I was only coming in, I think, once a week. And now it's sort of taken full speed, where honestly, I think I'm doing maybe 3 to 4 days on site. So I have really full days. Sometimes I'm there the entire day. We are doing testing. Everything is done safely. So we have like the plexiglass and the masks and everything. So it's been helpful to see, because I feel like for me, I learned by doing. So that's been great. But yeah, it's been such a transition, because we don't really know. We had a date that we were going to come back, and then that changed. So I think we're just kind of all in it together and seeing what's going to happen.
You know what's crazy though? I know some districts that are like 100% like basically in person, or like a full hybrid model since the beginning of the school year. My sister's student teaching right now, and she's been going in like 2-3 times a week, student teaching a class. And then there's one district in Maryland, they're fully virtual, not doing any in-person testing. So it really differs. Like, it depends on where you are in the same country. It's really crazy.
There's private schools here that have completely opened too, where like all the kids and the teachers are back. So it's just, yeah, it is really interesting.
Yeah, I would agree with that and say for me, most of the districts around me are either doing a hybrid or fully in person.
Something that I've heard from other districts, which I really liked, was that as they're trying to introduce more students, they start with kindergarten and first grade and then see how that goes for a few weeks and then start introducing other grades. So I like that, you know, they're targeting the most vulnerable students first, because, you know, it's so hard for those little ones to be able to focus.
What a year to be an intern.
Mm-hmm.
I just remember, I was going to say, I remember in March when this happened, and I was interviewing and going through that process, I also thought this was going to be like a month and we'd be back. So it was definitely such an adjustment, especially for us, you know, because we probably had an idea of what our internship year would be like, and that kind of flipped completely.
Yeah, a similar story. I remember thinking back to, you know, like March or April, and thinking of the year above me, the cohort above me, and I was thinking like, oh, I feel so bad for them, like, which I did, and I still do, thinking it was going to be, you know, gone again by August, and meanwhile, we're probably getting the rough end of the stick here.
Yeah,
that's funny.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think it's like we all looked forward to internships since like day one, you know, we had an idea of what our year would be like and everything. So I think it's a good lesson in going with the flow and being able to adapt to different situations.
Yeah, we're definitely building like new skills and different skills that other people haven't had, you know, opportunities.
Yeah, I remember on day one of my first day of grad school, for school psych, my professor said, the number one skill a school psych could have is being flexible. And then she taught our last class before we went fully remote in our second year. And she was like, well, we're going to see how flexible we can be. So
seriously.
Yeah.
That's kind of like my supervisor said something kind of similar, where she was like, if you can learn how to be a school psych during a pandemic, you will be fine being a school psych during a regular school year.
Mm-hmm.
True.
It's been difficult building good relationships with staff and students in my school. 1, 2, 3.
I had to think about it.
I'm like, should I flip it? I don't know.
Tell us more.
At first, I was mainly thinking about the relationships, even though they're mainly virtual, with the other special education teachers and the other support personnel, like the speech pathologist, the OT, PT, social worker, just because I feel like in my district, they're very close knit. They work together really collaboratively. So I've really liked that about the district that I'm in. But then now I'm kind of leaning towards disagree because I still haven't seen all of the students and I still haven't met all of the students. So it's just, yeah, it's not a normal school year.
Yeah, I have to kind of echo what Madeline's saying. I think for me, the relationship building in terms of with my direct supervisors, my psych supervisors, has been great just because I've been able to be on site. So we have that relationship. As far as with the kids, I have one counseling group and I'm doing much more counseling now. And I find when I compare it to being on site, it's a huge adjustment, in terms of that relationship and that rapport building, especially with kids that are autistic or ADHD, depending what groups you're running. So I just kind of navigating that was a little bit challenging in the beginning.
For me, I have been able to meet my supervisors in person, which has been great just to, have real conversations and build rapport with them. For students, I haven't been able to meet them, which in general just makes everything harder, obviously, especially building rapport and having, I guess you could say, like uninterrupted sessions if we're doing like groups or if we're doing individual. It just makes everything so much harder. And then when it comes to like teachers and other special ed professionals, it's just tough to, to collaborate with them.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like being virtual, like all the meetings and like conversations are so much more intentional. And like you have to like find a time and like a meeting link to talk to them. Whereas like if you're in the building, you might just like run into someone or like see someone in the lunchroom or in the hallway and introduce yourself or like catch up, talk about a student. And so I feel like if there's one thing I'm missing during this internship experience, it's more of that like relationship building piece. Of course, like if I do have those meeting links and have those conversations with the students and the staff, like that connection is there. But kind of starting those connections, I think that's been really tough for me.
I chose the right field. 1, 2, 3. Yay!
That's good.
I think I'll just start off by saying, I think there's days where I can see how stressful the job can be, and it is a lot of work and there's a lot that we do and that we take on, but there's really beautiful moments where I've sat in on IEP meetings and I've had the kids' parents, tell my psych that she changed their life because of her, their kid made so much progress and they're just so thankful. Or when you have a kid give you a hug and, tell you thank you, and I think seeing all of that makes it worth it.
For me, so I'm sure a lot of you can relate where you didn't know that this was even a field until much later in your academic careers, maybe. And I was so grateful to find out what school psychology was, because I remember saying to my like undergrad counselor or academic advisor, I really love my psych major, but I also like volunteering in the school that I'm volunteering in. And I wish there was something I could do that would combine that, but I didn't want to be a school counselor necessarily. And my academic advisor was like, did I not give you this pamphlet on school psychology yet? And I was like, no. And then she handed it to me and I was like, oh my gosh, this is perfect.
That's awesome. I feel like a lot of people kind of find school psychology that way. Like they studied psych, they don't exactly know what they want to do, but they like working with kids, and maybe you don't want to go like clinical child psych route and you find school psychology. And I kind of found it that way too. And I know like teachers are amazing, but teaching is not my calling, but I want to work in a school and I love studying psychology. So definitely, I think I found the right calling for me.
I actually found the field, I think, so differently. I was working in urgent care and I had a school psych come in who was getting a physical for a job that she was starting, and I've never heard of this field. And she was just really kind and she told me what the job is and how much she loves it. And I was like, I wish I knew about this earlier. It matches up and aligns with all of my interests. I've never heard about this. I've always wanted to do psych. So I wish there was much more marketing for it. And, I went to an undergrad, it's not something you hear. It's not something that's really advertised as a career.
Yeah, I've never heard of anyone finding school psych that way, so that's a good story. But I think it is an issue in our field that we have to stumble upon it, or we kind of just get lucky and we find it at some point in our lives. So I do think there should be more exposure, and it does seem like NASP and other organizations are working towards that. But I wish there was more exposure somehow.
I'm worried about transitioning back to school in person as a first-year psychologist. 1, 2, 3.
So agree and disagree. I think I'm getting really great hands-on experience just because I'm able to be on site, but it's still different. The kids aren't back, so I know from practicum when I was on site, there's just so much that goes into a day. Just learning how to manage your time and consult with teachers and prioritize your day. I do get to see that in some capacity, but I do wonder how I will handle that when school does resume.
I know deep down that we're all going to be okay when we start our first jobs, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to be worried a little bit about making that transition back into full-time in the schools after all of this is over. And I just your first year, I know that there's so much learning to be done. So yeah, that is something that, still worries me a little bit, but deep down, we're going to be okay.
I feel like if my first year was just like what we're doing right now, I'm ready. But if we're going to be fully in person, I feel like there's going to be so much that I'm going to be learning. But with that, I'm sure everyone is going to give us some grace because they know how our internship year went. So worried, but we're all going to be fine.
Yeah.
We can do the hard things. We got this.
Yes.
Yeah, if we make it through this, I think we'll be okay. We'll adapt.
Distance learning is disproportionately impacting minoritized students. 1, 2, 3.
I put agree. I don't know what happened there. I think students who don't have access to computers or Wi-Fi, obviously, that's really challenging, and especially if their parents aren't able to be there or monitor them and check in with their homework. I think these are all things that are impacting their grade, their learning opportunity.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's truly hard to watch every day when we start the video calls and we see how firsthand how disproportionate it is, and seeing what it's actually like or what the learning environment really looks like. It makes it that much harder to kind of bear with. But then you think of the alternative and keeping people safe, and it's just like, you don't know the right answer. But I couldn't agree more that it's 100% affecting minority groups or low SES families more than anyone.
We all know, and we've all known, that there have been gaps in education even before this pandemic, but now because of this pandemic, it's just being exacerbated even more, and it's kind of showing problems that have been there all along. It's really like uncovering those problems.
I feel like an imposter. 1, 2, 3.
Okay, I'll start since I'm the odd one out. I definitely used to feel that way. So I completely understand, but I think throughout this process, I don't know what exactly changed, but I've been able to feel more at peace with it. And actually, it's probably because more and more people are open to talking about the imposter syndrome. And I think the more that we talk about it, the more we realize like this is something that happens with most people. And so I think that's like led me to be more at peace with, I'm learning, this is normal, all that.
Yeah, I try to recognize it whenever I'm feeling like, I shouldn't be here, or like I don't, I don't have the qualifications to be here. So I do try to recognize it because I know it's a thing. And that's a good point, Madeline, that it is helpful that, it's a common topic now, especially in academia or graduate students, or even, between us as school psychs. We can recognize it, which is a great thing.
I think it's something, it's something I'm still working through, to be honest. There's definitely parts of the job that I feel really confident and sure of myself. And then there's parts where I'm still figuring it out. And I think what's helped is just being honest and coming to my mentors and, getting their feedback and working together, because that's why we're here. We're interns. We're not supposed to know everything. And sometimes we get in our own heads and we feel like, we're supposed to know everything and we're supposed to figure it out. But that's why we're here. And that's part of our learning curve.
Yeah, I feel like we have to just keep telling ourselves, like, this is the training process, and everyone started, somewhere.
And I think what you guys said is that, I think Madeline said this really well, is reminding yourself that, I belong here.
I feel like I have a good work-life balance as an intern. 1, 2, 3.
So I'm going to do both, agree and disagree. My internship started off a little bit slower just because of the pandemic and we were kind of adjusting to everything. So it started off slower and then it did get really busy. So I had really great support from my mentors in the district, but I felt like for me personally, it was sort of adjusting from like a slower pace to now really hitting the ground running and balancing that with, outside commitments. So I think that's been sort of challenging on my end, is just that adjustment.
Yeah, no, I think that's why I said disagree. I just feel like in the beginning, it was very slow. Like the county was still trying to like figure it out. Like, are we doing in-person testing? Like, teachers were just figuring out their virtual classroom. And I feel like all of a sudden, like my second quarter rotation started. And then I'm still trying to like take care of like my YouTube channel and like all these reports that I have to start writing. And it was just like the past 2 weeks, it was insane. I feel like I haven't slept that much, and but I feel like it really depends on what your life looks like, and whether you're taking work home or work after hours. So I feel like I've been spending my weekends catching up on some report writing or some work.
Yes.
Because I don't know, like I'd rather spend my time during the day connecting with students or attending meetings rather than writing my reports and looking over files. I'd rather do that later. But I know if we're working as psychologists that those boundaries are really, really important if we want to stay happy and thriving.
So for me, for like the work-life balance dilemma, I don't have a life. Just kidding. But kind of. I mean, so during the pandemic, I'm not really doing much of the things that I would normally be doing. So I think that's made it a little bit easier. And just when I look back to that work-life balance during the first 2 years of grad school, it's so much better now. Because it's I mean, internship's a full-time job, so it's like once I'm done with internship, I can watch TV and not feel guilty about having to do my homework.
Yeah, I second what everyone said. Definitely, like for work-life balance, I started off slow, it picked up, and it's definitely busier now. I'm still trying to find a good like cutoff time where I put everything down and I just say, okay, I'll do this in the morning. And I'm still trying to get used to that, but it's getting better. So I would say overall, it's decent. But in regards to going back to grad school, I would say, thinking back, there were weeks where it was like really rough, and there wasn't really any balance. So honestly, I think sometimes some parts of second year were much rougher than what I have right now. But also, it's November, so I'll let you know in May how it turns out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have to agree with Bradley. I think when we're in practicum, you kind of have one foot in, one foot out because you're doing your practicum, but then you're still a student. So balancing those both worlds can be challenging. And then I was doing teaching. I was a sub during that time, so I felt like honestly I had no time off because I was just wearing so many different hats during the week. So with internship, it's just sort of like this is I'm like doing this 110%, and that's been nice. Where I'm not like a practicum student one day, a grad student the next, and then a sub teacher on a Friday.
Yeah, I know I said disagree, but I would much rather be a paid intern than go back to grad school and work 2 jobs and try to like finish all my readings.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so those are like the last of the statements. I will open it up to you guys if you want to leave any lasting remarks or anything to our viewers.
I have one, just something I thought of, I think mid conversation. I was in Pennsylvania, had like their state school psych association like seminar, meeting, whatever you want to call it. And they had a slide which like really caught pretty much everyone, kind of stopped everyone in their tracks. So I'll read it for you. The slide was how much learning has been or will be lost. And the bullet point said in 2005, children who missed 3 months of school in Pakistan following an earthquake, 4 years later, these students were learning at levels 1.5 years behind. So a year and a half behind. In 2006, 1/3 of children affected by Hurricane Katrina were found to be at least 1 year behind their age. So the first example was like 3 months, and the second one was Hurricane Katrina. So, several months to a year. So thinking about, students who have been remote since March, it's kind of terrifying to think of the lasting effects, especially for like our K through 5 population. Within the next few years, it's going to be interesting what our job looks like in regards to referrals and evaluations, depending on, if they don't receive adequate instruction and then, coming back and addressing the learning that's been lost.
Yeah, I think I always put myself in the shoes of the kids, and I think of, my experience in elementary, middle, or high school and how much this would impact me. And I think our job will shift a lot in the sense that we'll be doing much more counseling. I think that'll be really interesting to see.
I think if there's any time for a district to adopt MTSS approaches, it's definitely now. And especially once the kids are back in school, because the impact is going to be so great. And I think districts are going to have a really hard time with dealing with all of their students who are struggling, and then that dilemma of giving them that label of special education, knowing that there was just this pandemic and all of these environmental factors that play a role in that as well.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, what are grade level norms anymore? Like, I feel like after this year, like nothing's standardized anymore. Like, we've lost so much. And I feel like you said MTSS. I feel like we should also have like trauma-informed care, trauma-informed services, because for some, like this is very traumatic. Like people have lost lives, they've lost homes, a lot of different things. And so for some students, they're doing fine. They're thriving in school.
The one thing I hope is, like we talked about, this did highlight the disparities that are happening. So maybe this will push for change, and maybe to have more counseling or provide more resources to those students.
Thank you guys so much for watching. And thank you guys for being guests and talking about your experiences. This was so much fun and like super eye-opening.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Tiffany.
Bye.